The rain lashed against my windshield like furious waves crashing on jagged rocks. I could barely see through the blurry streaks, my old truck's wipers doing little to clear the view. The engine sputtered, threatening to die at any second. My hands gripped the wheel tight, the knuckles turning white. My daughter, Ava, sat beside me, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, her tiny fingers gripping the ends of her sleeves. "Daddy, are we almost home?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I forced a smile, though my chest was tight with worry. We didn't have a real home, just a tiny, run-down trailer on the outskirts of town. But I wasn't about to let my little girl feel that weight. "Almost, sweetheart," I reassured her. That's when I saw it. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom was pulled over on the side of the empty road, its hazard lights flashing. Even through the pouring rain, I could tell it was a car that didn't belong in a place like this. Whoever owned it was either lost or in serious trouble. Ava's eyes widened. "Daddy, that's a fancy car." I pulled over in front of it, my tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement. Stepping out, the rain instantly soaked through my worn-out jacket, but I barely noticed. That's when I saw her. A woman sat inside, barely visible through the fogged-up window. When she opened the door, the interior lights illuminated her delicate features. She was stunning, long, dark hair clinging to her wet skin, eyes filled with frustration and a hint of desperation. But what stood out most wasn't her beauty. It was the unmistakable look of someone completely out of place in this world. She wasn't just rich. She was untouchable rich. And yet, here she was, stranded in the middle of nowhere. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward. "Ma'am, you need help?" Her brows furrowed as she glanced at me, skepticism in her gaze. My car just stopped. It won't start." I nodded. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated before finally nodding, stepping out of the car. Even in the downpour, she carried herself with an air of authority. But I wasn't intimidated. I had more important things to worry about than a rich stranger's attitude. Opening the hood, I took a deep breath. I've been fixing up old cars since I was a teenager. This one, though, a whole different beast. Still, I gotta work. As I worked on the engine, the woman, who introduced herself as Emma, stood beside me, her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. "You don't seem like a mechanic," she noted, watching me closely. I chuckled bitterly. "I fix cars when I can. Mostly just trying to get by, you know." A flicker of something crossed her face, but she didn't comment. Instead, she glanced at my truck, where Ava was peeking out, her little face pressed against the window. "That your daughter?" I glanced back and nodded. "Yeah, Ava. She looks young." "How old is she?" "6. There was a pause before she said softly, "And her mother?" I swallowed hard but kept my focus on the engine. "Gone." Emma didn't press. Instead, she pulled off her expensive coat and, without a word, draped it over Ava's shoulders through the open window. Ava beamed up at her, mumbling a shy "thank you." I stopped what I was doing for a moment, glancing at Emma. Most rich people I'd met wouldn't even look my way. But this woman, despite her clear frustration, had just shown my daughter kindness. I didn't know what to make of it. After another few minutes, I got the car running. The deep purr of the engine roared to life, and Emma let out a breath of relief. "You're a lifesaver," she admitted. "Just a guy trying to help," I replied. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a thick stack of cash, offering it to me. I took a step back. "I don't need your money." Emma frowned. "But," I shook my head. "I help because it's the right thing to do, not because I expect anything in return." For the first time, her expression softened. Not the usual detached look of the rich, but something genuine. "That's rare." I shrugged. "Maybe, but it's just how I was raised." Emma stared at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Thank you, Logan." How she knew my name, I didn't know, but the way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. Something told me this wasn't the last time I'd be seeing her. And I was right. What happened next would change everything. I watched as Emma slid back in her Rolls-Royce, her elegant fingers gripping the wheel. The engine hummed smoothly, thanks to the quick fix I'd done. She looked at me once more, her gaze unreadable, before rolling the window down. "You're an interesting man, Logan," she said, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite place. "Take care of yourself." And just like that, she drove off into the night, disappearing into the storm as if she had never been there. I stood there for a long moment, drenched in rain, before shaking my head and climbing back into my truck. Ava, wrapped in Emma's expensive coat, looked up at me with bright eyes. "Daddy, do you think we'll see her again?" I smiled, brushing her damp hair from her face. "Doubt it, sweetheart. People like her don't run in the same world as us. At least, that's what I thought. But fate had other plans." The next morning, I was woken by a loud knock on the trailer door. My first instinct was panic. No one ever visited us out here. Rent was due, and I was already behind. Maybe it was the landlord. But when I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. A man in a sharp black suit stood there, holding an envelope. His presence screamed wealth and power. "Logan Carter," he asked in a crisp tone. I hesitated. "Who's asking?" He held out the envelope. "A personal invitation. Miss Emma Sinclair wishes to see you." I blinked. Emma Sinclair? The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. I took the envelope with hesitant fingers and opened it. Inside was a sleek, embossed card with an address and time. "Tonight." I looked up at the man. "What's this about?" The man didn't answer. "A car will pick you up at 6. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I stared at the envelope, my heart hammering. What the hell had I gotten myself into? That evening, true to the man's word, a sleek black car pulled up outside my trailer. It looked like it had no business being here, just like Emma that night. I debated all day whether to go, but something about her invitation pulled at me. Ava clung to my leg. "Daddy, do you have to go?" I knelt down, kissing her forehead. "I'll be back soon, sweetheart. You stay with Mrs. Thompson next door, okay?" She nodded reluctantly. As I slid into the car, my nerves twisted. The driver didn't speak, just drove in silence. The farther we went, the more unfamiliar the city became. And then, we pulled up in front of Sinclair Towers, the kind of building that belonged in magazines, not in the life of a broke single dad. A doorman greeted me, leading me inside. The lobby alone was bigger than my entire trailer park. I was out of place, completely, but I had no time to dwell on that. Because when I stepped into the private lounge, Emma was waiting for me, dressed in a sleek black dress. Her presence was commanding. But what shook me was the revelation that hit me like a truck. Emma Sinclair, the name I hadn't recognized before. The Billionaire CEO, the woman who owned half the city. And I had fixed her car in the rain like she was just some random stranger. I felt my stomach drop. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice wary. Emma stood, walking towards me with a smirk. "Logan, do you have any idea what you did that night?" I frowned. "Fix your car." She chuckled softly. "No, you showed me something I hadn't seen in a long time." My fist clenched. "And what's that?" Her gaze locked onto mine. "A good man." My breath hitched. I had no idea what I just stepped into, but I was about to find out. Emma didn't waste time. She gestured for me to sit, her piercing gaze locked onto mine. "I did some digging, Logan. Single father. Struggling. No steady job. Barely making ends meet." My jaw clenched. "If you brought me here to pity me, I don't need it." Her smirk deepened. "Pity? No. I brought you here because I need a man like you." That caught me off guard. "What?" She leaned forward. "You didn't take my money that night. That tells me you're not like the people I usually deal with. You're honest. And right now, I need someone I can trust." My instinct screamed at me to be careful. "For what?" Her expression darkened. "There are people in my world who would do anything to see me fall. My business is under attack, and I don't trust anyone." I scoffed. "And you trust me?" Emma tilted her head. "I trust that you don't care about money, and that makes you the safest person to have around." I shook my head. "Look, I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not. I'll pay you enough to change your daughter's life forever." She interrupted, her voice low and serious. I froze. She knew exactly where to hit me. Emma leaned back. "I need a personal bodyguard. Not just anyone. A man who isn't already corrupted by wealth and greed. Someone who can be in my corner when things get messy." I narrowed my eyes. "And why would I want to step into your world? I barely survived my own." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because, Logan, you're already in it. The moment you stopped that night and helped me, you became part of something much bigger." A chill ran down my spine. I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. But I had a feeling my life was never going to be the same again. I sat there, my mind racing. Everything about this felt like a trap. Emma Sinclair, billionaire, business mogul, offering me a life-changing opportunity. It was insane. "You think I'm qualified for this?" I asked, skepticism lacing my voice. I'm not some trained security guy. I'm just a father, she interrupted, her voice smooth yet firm. A man who knows struggle, who knows what it means to fight for something real. I shook my head. And what do you think is going to happen? That I'll be your bodyguard and somehow protect you from all the rich vultures circling your empire. Emma leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. Yes, she wasn't joking. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. What if I say no? She smirked. You walk out of here. No hard feelings. But she let the word hang between us like a ticking bomb. I can guarantee you'll regret it. I clenched my fists. Why? Her eyes darkened. Because the people coming after me, they don't just stop at me. They ruin everyone in their way. And now that you've helped me once, she paused, letting her words sink in. You're already on their radar. A chill ran down my spine. I had no business being in her world. No business getting caught in the crosshairs of whatever war she was fighting. But I wasn't stupid. If she was right, if people like that really existed, then Ava and I weren't safe anymore. I swallowed hard. If I do this, what happens to my daughter? Emma's expression softened for the first time. She'll be safe. I give you my word. I didn't trust her. Not fully, but something about the way she said it. I exhaled. All right, I'm in. Emma smiled, but there was something dangerous in it. Good choice, Logan. I had no idea what I had just agreed to, but I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke up in a penthouse. Not my trailer. Not my old, creaky bed. A penthouse. My brain took a solid minute to catch up. The last thing I remembered was signing something, shaking Emma's hand, and being driven to some high-end building. And now, I was waking up in a bed that probably cost more than my entire life's earnings. I groaned, sitting up. A neatly folded suit sat on a chair nearby. Next to it was a note. Be ready by 7 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 6:59. A knock sounded at the door. Before I could even respond, a man stepped inside. Tall, muscular, the kind of guy you don't want to mess with. You're late, he said in a gruff voice. I raised an eyebrow. For what? Training. I blinked. Training for what? The man smirked. For survival. Training was hell. Apparently, Emma wasn't satisfied with me just being a bodyguard in name. No, she had real professionals turning me into something else. You fight like a truck driver, one of them muttered as I hit the mat for the 5th time that morning. I groaned, rolling onto my back. Because I'm a truck driver. The instructor shook his head. Not anymore. By the 3rd week, I was bruised, sore, and exhausted. But I was learning, not just how to fight, how to think like someone who survives. Emma visited once in a while, watching from the sidelines. She never said much, just observed. And when I finally landed a knockout hit on one of my trainers, she simply nodded. Now you're getting it, she murmured. But I wasn't stupid. This wasn't just about learning how to fight. Emma was preparing me for something specific, and I was about to find out what. It happened on a Thursday night. Emma and I were walking out of a high-end restaurant after some meeting with investors. My new suit was stiff, my muscles still sore from training. And then I saw him, a man in a black hoodie, lurking near the exit. Something about him made my gut twist. I stepped closer to Emma. We need to go. Now. She didn't question me, just nodded. We turned the corner and walked straight into an ambush. 3 men, all dressed in black. One of them smirked. Miss Sinclair, we have some unfinished business. I stepped in front of her, my fists clenching. Not tonight, boys. One of them laughed. And who the hell are you? I exhaled, rolling my shoulders. 3 weeks of training. Time to see if it was worth anything. The first guy lunged. I moved on instinct, dodging to the side, slamming my elbow into his ribs. He stumbled. The second one swung at me. I ducked, grabbed his wrist, twisted. Something cracked. The third one hesitated. Emma stepped forward. Run back to whoever sent you, she said coldly. Tell them I don't scare easy. The man hesitated. Then, with one last glare, he grabbed his injured friend and took off. I exhaled, shaking out my hands. Emma looked at me, her gaze unreadable. Not bad, Logan. I smirked. Not bad yourself. She smiled, but in her eyes I saw something else. This was just the beginning, and things were about to get much, much worse. The night after the ambush, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the fight. I could handle that. It was the way Emma had handled it. She wasn't afraid. Not even a little. She stood there like a queen among peasants, daring them to come at her. That wasn't just confidence. That was power. But power like that didn't come without enemies. And I had just thrown myself into the middle of it. I sat on the edge of the penthouse balcony, staring down at the city below. This wasn't my world. I was a single dad struggling to put food on the table, and now I was tangled up in something far bigger than I understood. The door behind me opened. I didn't turn. Emma's voice was soft. "You're awake." I exhaled. Hard to sleep when you realize you're protecting a woman with a death wish. She chuckled. "I don't have a death wish, Logan." I turned to look at her. She was in a silk robe, her hair loose, her expression unreadable. "Then why aren't you afraid?" Her smile faded. She walked over, standing next to me. The city lights reflected in her eyes. "Because fear is a weakness in my world. The moment they sense it, they tear you apart." I frowned. "And what exactly is your world, Emma?" She exhaled, choosing her words carefully. "I inherited my father's company when I was 22. He built an empire, but with that empire came enemies. Competitors, rivals, men who don't like the idea of a woman sitting at the top." I listened in silence. I've spent years proving I belong here. But now, someone is trying to destroy everything I've built. They've been coming at me from every angle: business deals, lawsuits, and now, outright threats. She looked at me. "That's why I hired you. Not just to fight for me, to see what's coming before it hits." I studied her. "You don't just want protection. You want a soldier." She didn't deny it. That was the moment I realized I had crossed a line. I wasn't just here to be her bodyguard. I was being dragged into her war, and I had no idea how deep it went. A week passed. Then the first real attack came. It wasn't on Emma. It wasn't on me. It was on Ava. I was in the middle of an afternoon training session when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson, my elderly neighbor who watched Ava while I was away. Her voice was shaking. "Logan, there's a man outside my house. He's asking about Ava." I felt ice in my veins. "Did he touch her?" No. She's inside with me. But he won't leave. He says he knows you." I was already grabbing my keys. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I'm on my way." Emma was watching me from across the training room. "What's wrong?" I didn't have time for explanations. "I need a car. Now." To my surprise, she didn't ask questions. She tossed me a key. "Take the black SUV downstairs. Go." I flew through the streets, my hands gripping the wheel so tight, I thought it might snap. My heart pounded against my ribs. If someone had touched my daughter. By the time I skidded to a stop in front of Mrs. Thompson's house, the man was still there, leaning against his black car, waiting. I got out, my blood boiling. "Who the hell are you?" The man smirked. He was dressed too well for a random thug. Sharp suit, slick back hair, the kind of guy who looked like he had never worked an honest job in his life. "Logan Carter," he drawled. "I was hoping we could chat." I clenched my fists. "You're standing outside my kid's house. That's not a chat. That's a threat." The man raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. She's safe. For now." My pulse roared in my ears. "If you so much as breathe near my daughter again, I'll break your legs." His smirk widened. "See, that's exactly why I wanted to meet you. You're dangerous when pushed, and that makes you a problem." I stepped closer. "You have no idea what kind of problem I can be." His eyes glinted with amusement. "Maybe, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I came to deliver a message." I waited. His smile faded. "Walk away from Emma Sinclair. Take your daughter. Leave town. If you don't, what happens next won't be a warning." I held his gaze. "You think I scare easy?" His smirk returned. "I think your father. And that means you have something to lose. A warning. A promise." And a line had just been drawn. As he turned to leave, I called out, "What's your name?" He glanced back. "You'll find out soon enough." Then he got in his car and drove off. I stood there for a long moment, my hands shaking with barely contained rage. Then I turned, rushed inside, and scooped Ava into my arms. She hugged me tight. "Daddy, who was that man?" I exhaled, kissing the top of her head. "Nobody you need to worry about, sweetheart." But inside, I knew the truth. War had just been declared, and I was going to make them regret ever coming near my daughter. I stormed back to Emma's penthouse. She was waiting for me, her expression cool and unreadable. "What happened?" I threw the keys onto the table. "Some guy just threatened my daughter." Emma's expression changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. The flicker of something dark behind her eyes. "Describe him," she ordered. "Rich. Arrogant. Dressed too well to be a thug." He knew my name. Emma exhaled, rubbing her temples. Dante Devereaux. The name meant nothing to me, but judging by the way she said it, it meant everything to her. Who is he? I asked. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. A snake. He was once my father's business partner. But when my father died, Dante tried to take everything. I fought him off, but he's been circling ever since. He wants my company, my power. I frowned. And now he's coming after me? Emma's gaze hardened. No, he's coming after me. You're just collateral. I stepped forward. Then he just made a mistake. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, I clenched my jaw. He thought threatening my daughter would make me run. Emma smirked. But it only made you stay. I nodded. Damn right. Her expression softened. Then we fight. I exhaled. I had walked into a storm, and there was no turning back now. Emma wasted no time. Within the hour, she had assembled a war room, a dimly lit space filled with high-tech monitors and maps of the city. A team of people I didn't recognize were already there, speaking in hushed, urgent voices. She wasn't just rich. She was prepared. Emma pointed at a screen, displaying security footage. Dante won't stop now. He tested you today, Logan. If you don't break first, he'll push harder. I clenched my fists. Then let's make sure he regrets it. She nodded approvingly. I like the way you think. One of her men spoke up. We've traced Dante's movements. He's staying at the Sterling, top floor. We suspect he's making deals with rival investors to weaken your stock. Emma's eyes darkened. Then we hit him where it hurts. I frowned. You mean in his wallet? She smirked. No, his ego. I wasn't sure what she had planned, but I was about to find out. That night, Emma flipped the script. Instead of hiding, she walked right into Dante's den. The Sterling Hotel was pure luxury, the kind of place where billionaires schemed over expensive whiskey. Emma walked into the lobby like she owned the place. Dressed in an ice blue gown, she was the very picture of untouchable wealth. Dante was already there, lounging in a leather chair near the bar, surrounded by men in tailored suits. The moment he saw her, his smirk widened. Emma, he drawled. Didn't expect you to come to me. She gave a slow, practiced smile. I wanted to see the man who thought he could scare me with a cheap intimidation stunt. Dante chuckled. The single dad. I take it he's still breathing. I stepped forward, my jaw tightening. Try it again, and I'll make sure you're not. Dante's men tensed, but he held up a hand, laughing. Relax, boys. Our guest is feeling bold. Emma's voice was calm, but dangerous. Let's cut to the chase. You want my empire. You want me out of the picture. But you keep making one mistake, Dante. He raised an eyebrow. And what's that? She leaned in slightly. You underestimate me. Before Dante could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smirked. Then she turned it around, showing him a live feed of his accounts. Numbers dropping. Investments crashing. Dante's smirk vanished. Emma's voice was like ice. While you were busy playing dirty, I was playing smarter. I just pulled out of every deal connected to your name. And guess what? She tilted her head. So did everyone else who matters. Dante's face darkened. You. She cut him off. Oh, and about Logan. She gave a lazy smile. He's under my protection now. So if anything happens to him, or his daughter, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'll make sure your empire burns to the ground. For the first time, Dante looked shaken. Emma turned to me. We're done here. I followed her out, my blood still hot with adrenaline. The war wasn't over. But round one. We just won. Back at the penthouse, I turned to Emma. That was dangerous. She poured herself a glass of wine. So it was letting him think he could control me. I exhaled. What happens now? She sipped her drink, eyes gleaming. Now, he licks his wounds, and we prepare for whatever comes next. I shook my head. And what about me? She smirked. Logan, you were never just some bodyguard. You're part of this now. I let that sink in. I had walked into a storm, and somehow, I had become part of it. Days passed, and things got quiet. Too quiet. Then, one night I got a call. Mrs. Thompson's voice was frantic. Logan, Ava's missing. My world stopped. I gripped the phone. What? She was outside playing. I turned my back for a second, and I was already moving. Emma met my eyes as I stormed toward the door. It's Dante. I didn't need to hear any more. It was time to end this. Tracking Ava wasn't hard. Dante was arrogant. He wanted me to come for him. He was waiting in an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Ava was there, unharmed but scared, tied to a chair. Dante stood in front of her, a cruel smirk on his face. "Took you long enough," he said. I clenched my fists. "Let her go." He shrugged. "Or what?" Emma stepped out from the shadows. "Or you'll wish you never met me." Dante froze. His men turned, only to realize they were surrounded. Emma's private security force had them outnumbered. Dante lost. Emma stepped closer, her voice cold. "You broke the rules, Dante." His face twisted in rage. "You think you've won?" She leaned in. "I don't think. I know." With a single nod, her men moved in. Dante was dragged away, his empire crumbling behind him. It was over. I rushed to Ava, untying her. She threw her arms around me, crying. I held her tight. "It's okay, baby. You're safe." Emma watched, something unreadable in her gaze. After everything, I finally saw it. She wasn't just powerful. She was alone. And for the first time, I understood why she had pulled me into her world. She needed someone real. I looked at her. "It's over." She gave a small smile. "For now." I exhaled. "What happens next?" She tilted her head. "That's up to you, Logan." I looked at Ava. At Emma. For the first time in a long time, I had a choice. And I knew exactly what I wanted. I stood beside Emma, watching the city lights. "You could walk away," she said softly. I shook my head. "And let you deal with all this alone." She smirked. "So you're staying?" I exhaled. "Yeah." She nodded. "Good." I wasn't just a struggling single dad anymore. I was something more. And I was ready. Ava was safe. Dante was gone. Emma's empire still stood. But this was just the beginning. Because in this world, there was always another fight coming. And this time, I was ready for it.